Hi there, this is Tony from pianotone.ca, and in this video I'm going to provide an intro on how you can edit small segments of a MIDI recording using the punch-in, punch-out, and quantize features of your DGX-670. Now, if you aren't already familiar with how to record MIDI songs using the 16-track recorder on your DGX-670, you're going to want to watch my video on that before you watch this video, so I've left a link to that video in the description below. So, on to the punch-in, punch-out, and quantize features on the DGX-670.
Okay, so the basic idea of the punch in and punch out feature is to allow you to edit existing tracks without having to re-record the whole thing. So basically, you punch in at a spot where you want to start overwriting a track and punch out at a spot where you want to stop overwriting a track. And there are multiple ways you can control how and when you punch in and punch out. If I press Menu, and I go over to the Menu 2 tab, down to Song Creator, and press Enter. So on this screen, the Record Start section says when you want to punch in and start recording. Normal is just going to be wherever you happen to be in your song when you hit the record button. First key on means it's going to punch in and start recording the second that you start playing the piano. And punch in at will punch you in at a specific measure that you can specify. Then for record end, replace all means everything after you've punched in will be replaced. So even if you stop recording after just one measure, anything after that that's remaining on a track from a prior recording is going to be gone. Punch out means as soon as you stop recording, then everything after that on that track will remain. And punch out at means you want to punch out at a specific measure. Then you also have the pedal punch in and punch out feature. If I turn this on, it disables the record start and record end, because what this is going to do is if you have a triple pedal unit connected, you can punch in by pressing and holding down the middle pedal, and then as soon as you let go of it, then that will be punching out. I've actually tried that a few times, and to be honest, it's harder than it sounds, but I could probably get used to it with some practice. Now, while this sounds wonderful, it can be a bit finicky to work with, especially with a piano track that often has sustained notes gradually fading out. Trying to punch in the middle of a sustained note isn't going to work very well. And you can also often run into issues with the timing of the notes you play, where you may have played a note just a millisecond too early or late, which the DGX isn't going to care about when it punches in or out at a very specific point. That issue, however, can be mitigated at least somewhat with the Quantize feature that I mentioned. So I've pre-recorded a simple MIDI track with piano and some simple accompaniment where I intentionally messed up a chord that I'm going to use for this demo. I'm going to load it into memory. I'm going to press Exit here first, and then I'm going to press Select. I'm going to go over to the User tab, and then I'm going to go down to Punch Test. Now, as soon as I've selected that, when I press Exit, you can tell what your currently selected MIDI song is because it's displayed in the bottom left-hand corner of the main menu. So now let's just take a listen. I'm going to bring the score up as well so we can watch. And let's take a listen to this track. So you probably heard the mistake that I made. That was on one chord, and it was on measure 6. If I navigate over to measure 6. Note you can also see the measures up here where it says page. So I played a whole bunch of notes there when I was trying to play a G chord. Now also take note of the fact that on measure 7, I've got a chord at an F chord at the start of measure 7. You'll see why I'm mentioning that in a minute. So let's set up the punch in and punch out to try and fix this. So I go into Song Creator, I'm going to turn the pedal punch in and out off, and I'm going to punch in at measure 6 and punch out at measure 7. I'll press Exit, and I'll load up the score again. Rewind to the start. So I'll press Record. Now you do have to be careful here because any track that is armed for recording, which means it's red here, like tracks 9 to 16, which is the accompaniment, if I go ahead and proceed with trying to re-record measure 6 here, it's going to overwrite the accompaniment on that's recorded already on measure 6. So to make sure that doesn't happen, I'm going to hold down Record, and I'm going to hit each one of these. so that they're not going to record anymore. The on means it'll still play back and we'll hear it while I'm recording, but it's not going to get overwritten. Now, while the intent of the punch in and punch out feature is for me to just replay my mistake now, I'm actually not going to play anything here because I want to demonstrate something. Based on the punch in and punch out settings, if I don't play while I record here, my misplayed chord at the start of measure 6 should just get deleted, and then I should have a blank measure 6. So I'm going to press play to start the recording, and let's see what happens. Okay, so let's rewind, take a look at the score, see what happened here. So at the start of measure 6, there's still some notes left here. Not all of the notes that were there, but there's still some left. When I go to measure 7, my chord at the start of measure 7 is gone. So what's going on here? Well, the DGX-670 is basically a computer, so it's going to execute the punch in and punch out at precisely the moments we set it at. And I'm a human with only beginner-level piano skills, so this is happening because I played my chords just slightly out of time. So the messed up chord at the start of measure 6, some of those notes must have been played just before the official start of measure 6, and those notes are still here, and then I must have just played the rest of the notes that were there within measure 6, and that's why those got deleted. And then measure 7, I must have played that F chord just a tiny bit early so that it was technically not within measure 7, so it got erased. So this tells me I need to practice a bit more with my metronome. Now, while this does seem like it could make the punch-in feature kind of frustrating, there is a way to mitigate that in most situations, and that's the Quantize feature. So I'm going to exit out of here. And I'm going to reload my same song so I can start again. I'm not going to save my changes. Now I'm just going to go back to take a look at the score and make sure I'm back to where I started. Yep, so that messed up chord is there, and my chord at the start of measure 7 is there. So I'll go back to the start. So now I'll go back into Song Creator. And I'm going to go to the Channel tab. And I'm going to choose Quantize and hit Enter. Now, if you don't know what Quantize does, this is a tool that you're going to find in most DAW recording software, and it's designed to help deal with this exact issue. And it does that by trying to move mistimed notes to the nearest proper note interval, and you can choose what that interval is to the nearest quarter note or smaller. And you can even, supposedly, quantize notes that have a swing feel. If you play a lot of blues, you'll know what a swung rhythm is, and it's kind of slightly out of time by design. If you want more info on how the Quantize feature works, make sure you look in the reference manual on Yamaha's website, not at the main owner's manual. Now, I'm definitely not a specialist on quantizing, and have just started playing around with it, but my current song example is going to be a useful test. So the basic idea is that you choose a channel on the left, and I can actually just leave that on channel 1 because that's where my piano is getting recorded. And then you need to choose what size to use. Now, the size you want to choose here is usually going to be the smallest size of a note in your channel. Now, I was just playing whole or half notes mostly, so I'm going to choose the largest note possible, which is the quarter note. If I had eighth notes in my track someplace, then I would choose the eighth note instead. Now, you'll notice there's a quarter note and an eighth note and a 16th note, etc., but then right below them, there's the same thing, only with a 3 beside it. That's what you should choose if you've got any swung notes in your track, or if you've got like a triplet feel kind of a thing. I don't have any such notes in my track, so I'm just going to leave this at the quarter note. Now, to quantize my track, all I have to do is press Enter. So it says completed. So I'm going to exit out of here. Now let's take a look at the score. Now it doesn't look any different. I'm going to rewind to the start, and let's try recording over measure 6 again and see what happens. Once again, I'll make sure my accompaniment doesn't get overwritten. Let's try this out. Okay, well that looked promising. Let's rewind and go take a look at the score. Okay, so my G chord, my misplayed chord at the start of measure 6 is gone, so that's good. And my chord at the start of measure 7 is still there. So I could have gone ahead and recorded my replacement G chord there if I wanted to, but I'll just do that now. So I'm going to reload my original track again. I'm going to quantize it. And then I'm going to go try and re-record it, only this time I'm going to play my replacement chord. So since I've started over, I've got to hold down record again and make sure I don't overwrite my accompaniment. And let's get the score up there and give this a try. Let's see how that went. So there's my G chord at the start of measure 6. Measure 7 is fine because I quantized, so I didn't lose my F chord. Let's just take a quick listen to this and listen to my G chord carefully. Okay, so that worked, but did you notice anything? I'm just going to replay that again really quickly. Listen to the difference in dynamics. I'll just start from measure 4 when I play my G chord compared to the original recording. Hear how loud that was? That's because I didn't match my playing dynamics from the original recording. And that's not because of the DGX, that's pretty much all on me for not being able to duplicate my dynamics. But I did want to demonstrate that just so you can make the decision with your piano tracks. Is it going to be easier for you to try and punch in to correct mistakes and then possibly have to redo it a few times to match your dynamics? Or is it easier to just re-record the whole track at once? Totally up to you, but something to think about. So the Quantize feature is pretty awesome. Even if you don't need to punch in or out, it still might be an idea to save your recording first, then quantize it and listen to it to make sure it's okay. And if it is, then keep it. You're basically letting the DGX clean up your timing a little bit, even if it is just slightly off. And if you're a finger drummer, you will love running the Quantize feature on your manually created drum tracks to make sure that they're perfectly in time. So while the Quantize feature is definitely a huge help with making punching in and punching out easier to do, there is another issue with punching in and punching out with piano tracks in particular, in addition to the issue I mentioned just now with dynamics. That's definitely challenging, and that is trying to punch in or out in the middle of a sustained chord or notes. So I've got another super quick song here I'm going to load. This one has a mistake that I want to correct that's in the middle of a measure. It's in the middle of measure 4. I'm going to go select and go to punch 2. So now that's selected. I'll just bring the score up here and you can watch and listen at the same time. So it's pretty easy to hear that. At the middle of measure 4. So if I punch in at measure 4 and punch out at 5, what's going to happen? Well, I can replay that misplayed chord, but I'm going to lose the sustain of the C chord from the prior measure that I'm still holding the sustain pedal down for on my original recording that's at the start of measure 4. But let's just demonstrate that so you can check it out. So I'm going to rewind. I'm going to go to here and I'm going to switch this to measure 4 and punch out at measure 5. And let's hit record. Make sure we don't lose our accompaniment in measure 4. And I'm just going to try and re-record that chord now and see what happens. So let's check the score out and see how that worked. So it looks like it worked fine. Take a quick listen. that sounded fine, but if you got your headphones on, if you really pay attention, I'm going to play it once more. At the start of measure 4, listen for the sustain for that C chord from measure 3. It's just going to disappear. So you can hear the sustain just disappear there, so not ideal. So what's another option here? Let's reload the original song again. Not going to save my changes. So now I'm back to where I was before. But this time I'm going to go to Song Creator. I'm going to switch the punch in from punching in at measure 4 to punching in with the first key on. So basically it's going to start recording the second that I play. So with this, I can try and replay the misplayed chord at just the right time so I don't lose the sustain from the prior chord. But what do I got to think about here? Well, what if if I time my replacement chord slightly different than my original faulty chord? It's not going to start recording until I play a key, so if I happen to play my replacement chord a millisecond after when I played my original chord that I messed up, then it's not going to replace all of that original chord. What can I do to maybe mitigate that a little bit is I can quantize now. So I'm going to do that. Channel 1, quarter note, hit enter to quantize. Now that's going to fix any timing issues with my faulty chord, but I do still need to nail the timing of the new one. So let's try this out. Score up, make sure I'm rewound, hit record. Disable recording on the accompaniment tracks, and let's try this. So let's see how that worked. Okay, not too bad. Let's take a listen and let's listen for that sustain on the C chord from measure 3. Okay, that actually turned out really, really well, but if I had played my new chord a tiny bit late, it wouldn't have started recording until I played. So if I was late, you would have heard a millisecond of the original faulty chord. So it does help, but it can still be challenging.
So my opinion on the punch-in and punch-out feature on the DGX-670, it's pretty cool. I can definitely see myself using it in certain situations, especially with the Quantize feature helping to minimize the timing issues that I demonstrated. But to be honest, I don't see myself using this much for piano tracks, given the issues with getting smooth sustained notes and dynamics when trying to punch in within those sections. If I make some mistakes in a piano track, I'm going to be more likely to just try and re-record the entire thing. But this will definitely help out in making MIDI recordings with the DGX, and I'll probably try out quantizing my piano tracks anyways, just to clean up my beginner level timing. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you found the content useful, please smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. That does really help me out. I've left links in the description below to my video on getting started with MIDI recordings on the DGX, as well as to my entire DGX-670 playlist. And there are also links to check out current prices on the DGX itself, as well as some accessories. And as always, I also have links to some online piano training that I recommend. So thanks again for stopping by. Happy punching in and punching out, and have an awesome day.